All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Wanted to welcome everybody here this morning. We had an informational meeting at our city council last night about our Sustainable Sioux Falls framework that we have adopted, shared it with the city council, and that informational, and just wanted to have one final kind of follow-up presser on that for you as media members or anyone else to ask questions about that project. It's been a process to get to this point, so I want to thank everybody who's been a part of this. It's been almost a year and a half that we've been working on this. I specifically want to thank the team members here at the city, Holly, who you'll hear from in a minute, Josh, Mark Cotter, and then all the people in my office as well, Jenna and others that have been a part of this. So thanks for all the work from the city standpoint, but also the committee members who have been involved in this from the early innings, people in the community that we've been pulled in. I would say that there's probably not been a project or a plan or a framework like this that we've had more community members involved in than this one. So it's been very, very comprehensive in terms of who's all been brought to the table, which has been good. As you know, we rolled out the initial kind of draft of this back in, I think it was February. Was it February? March of 2022. And after that, we kind of recalibrated a little bit. And what I mean by that is there are a couple key players, some key industries that we needed to hear from during that draft. People who are involved in our energy industries, our building industries, and they got involved, and that led us to the framework that we have today. Good compromise is important whenever you're working on anything in government. The hard part about my job specifically is not only do I have to come up with ideas and policy and strategies, but then we have to implement them, and we have to figure out what it will cost and how we will do that, and is it pragmatic, and also know that we represent a wide range of voices on a lot of different topics. And so I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that the topic of climate and sustainability has probably been one of the more polarizing topics in recent years. And we saw that even on a local level past 12 months. But where we've landed is a result of collaboration. I'm really proud of where we landed, and I think it's a good plan and a good framework. So I'm going to invite Holly to come up and kind of just go over where we landed on that. And then we're going to hear from a couple members of the steering committee as well on that after Holly. So Holly, come on up.
All right. Good morning. Can I adjust this a little bit?
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's not. All right. Good morning, everyone. Holly Meyer, Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Sioux Falls. As Mayor Tenhaken noted, we are proud to finally release Sustainable Sioux Falls. The hard work really begins now, and we're ready. The process has taken about 2.5 years and has included a broad set of perspectives. A steering committee of more than 30 people helped create a mission and vision statement that have led us in our efforts. The mission statement is, the City of Sioux Falls leads the way toward a sustainable present and future through meaningful collaboration with the community. And the vision statement is, to be a thriving community today and for future generations by strengthening community well-being, protecting the environment, and supporting economic prosperity. We know conservation is important to South Dakotans. Already as a city, we've been able to accomplish so much. For example, each year we pick up more than 1,000 pounds of trash along the Big Sioux River with our community partners. And we've also replaced 80% of streetlights with LEDs, saving us $200,000 per year. Sustainable Sioux Falls provides a framework to build on this strong foundation and help us capture emerging opportunities and address sustainability challenges that support our residents and our community. As we developed Sustainable Sioux Falls, we kept 3 things in mind: supporting choice, cost, and benefits for all. Within the framework itself, the core content is categorized into 5 focus areas: natural systems, materials management and waste, community vitality and sustainable living, energy and buildings, and transportation and land use. Each focus area has 1 to 3 goals connected to it that will be measured through key performance indicators. These goals are included in the strategy section of the document, along with a list of actions we can take to help reach these goals. Important to note here is the actions are not exhaustive, and they're able to shift as technology or community needs evolve. It's important to us that this be a living document that helps us be adaptable as our community changes. An example of what you could see in the strategy section is the goal to expand and enhance local food production. And an associated action is educate and engage the public on growing food in yards, community gardens, and rooftop gardens, promote eating locally grown food, and continue to expand local food production sites. Moving forward, community collaboration is absolutely key to our success on these efforts. Strategies in this document are for City of Sioux Falls, public-private partnerships, and community members. It's going to take a One Sioux Falls effort to create the change and make an impact. And an example of collaboration already that we're working on is a new project, the Electric Vehicle Readiness Study. We're working with a local consultant, HDR, to assess projections for electric vehicles in Sioux Falls and the steps our community can take to help prepare for this newer transportation technology. We will need the community's input for this study, and our first open house and virtual engagement will be held July 12th. We'll be releasing more information on this project yet this week. Working together, Sioux Falls can continue to make significant progress on promoting sustainability and conservation and take care of today for a better tomorrow. Next, I want to invite a couple of members of our steering committee to the podium to speak on the collaboration that it took to get to this point and how vital it will be moving forward. First up is Joel Engel with the Home Builders Association of the Sioux Empire.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to just extend our thanks, our appreciation from our Home Builders Association. We appreciated being part of the conversation. We appreciated having a voice in the draft of the plan. I'd also want to just quickly thank and the other members of the steering committee that are not here. I mean, we've really had a good team of people, trying to carefully evaluate all the steps, trying to let everybody's opinions be heard, and then trying to arrive at conclusions that we thought made sense for the general public. One of our concerns at the HBA is that we're in the middle of what we consider a housing crisis right now. We're low on inventory. It's a nationwide issue. Some of it is related to labor, some of it's related to material availability, some of it's related to policy like this. Some of it's related to inflation, the times that we're in. And so one of our primary concerns is always on affordability and for the general public to be able to reach a point of attainment of new housing. That's becoming more and more difficult all the time. So our focus on this has primarily been from an affordability standpoint. On the implementation of some of the ideas and some of the goals in the plan, we were also concerned that some of that may be shaped into code enforcement and more of a mandate type policy. We believe that consumers should have constant choice of what they want to do and what they want to elect to implement in their homes and their buildings. A lot of good ideas were included in the initial draft of the plan, but we had a lot of concerns that we would be able to source some of the materials, some of the equipment that would be needed. I remarked to the sustainability group a number of times that over the past 10 to 15 years, a lot of changes have already been made by the public, not because the consumer has chosen to do it, but because manufacturers and suppliers are only offering more efficient, higher efficient, better options that fit more within this framework. So some of our choice has been taken away simply by what's available. That's a good thing, right? As those products have become more available, they become more affordable as well. When we try to press too hard along the edges and start to press too hard for quick change, sometimes not being able to source those materials, not being able to source that equipment, adds to the component of inflation. It adds to an impact on cost. The bottom line is, we're doing the best that we can. I think we've seen a lot of changes over the last decade or so. As I remarked yesterday to city council members, the goals that were or are included in the plan right now and were included in previous drafts, any member of the public, any business owner can choose to implement those practices in their personal life or their businesses at any time. It's their election to do so. But it needs to make sense to them on a personal level, on a financial level as well. So I'll leave it with those remarks. But once again, I want to thank you for including us. Thanks for including our industry in the conversation. Thank
you, Joel. Really appreciate your participation. All right, next up, I would like to introduce Dr. Dave O'Hara. He is the Sustainability Director for Augustana University.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll echo what Joel just said. I'm really grateful to have been a part of this process, not just to have been part of the process, but to have been part of the process with this community. As Joel pointed out, we had probably one of the most robust conversations and with diverse points of view that I've seen in my nearly 20 years of living in this city. And that's really, it's good for all of us to have that. Holly did, I just want to point out, an amazing job of leading us through this whole thing. The mayor got us kicked off, and that was, I think that was really fantastic. And then Holly took the reins and ran with it, guided a lot of really good conversations that could have been fractious and contentious, but Holly did, I think, probably far more than we pay her for. Let's just put it like that. So she's downright amazing. Since I'm Director of Sustainability at a university, I hope you'll tolerate me talking about what sustainability is just for a moment. Because as the mayor pointed out, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about climate. These are things that can become those, you hear the word and all of a sudden you start to think about what that's going to cost you or how that's going to connect to your politics or your religion and so on. As I'm the Clara Lee Olson Professor of Christian Values at Augustana, and I want to propose a way of thinking about sustainability that I hope will align with our values, whether you're Christian or not, and that is that we should be thinking about what it means to be good neighbors and what it means to be good ancestors. So this is not easy, and if anyone thinks they've got a quick and easy solution to that, and Holly recognizes just how challenging this is, and I think the mayor does as well, they're probably mistaken, but that we should be working towards being good neighbors and towards good ancestors is evident to me. And the conversation that we just had over the last several years, I hope is not the end of the conversation, but the beginning of a conversation that will go on, that we'll be able to pass on as ancestors to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. My hope is that future generations will look back on this moment and say, I sure am glad that my grandparents, great-grandparents, whatever, engaged in this conversation and got these things started. I know some folks are upset because what had begun as a plan with some very specific guidelines and actions has become a framework. Let's remember, as Joel was just saying, that framework leaves us with a lot of options and a lot of opportunities. This means that we've now got something that is a document that's part of the historic record of our city that we and our children and those who come after us can point to and say, the whole community came together and thought, these are things worth working towards. Yesterday, when I showed up for work at Augustana, the first sight that greeted me was my students working together to grow food that's going to be helping to alleviate food insecurity in one of the food deserts here in our city. Last thing that I saw when I left work was some more of my students working in the philosophy seminar room right next to my office who had a bunch of small and inexpensive technology that I bought for them that they were working on to use to make precision watering solutions on campus. Both these groups of students recognize that we need to care for one another, be good neighbors by making sure that no one in our community goes hungry. They recognize that there is a limited amount of fresh water available on the surface of the planet, and that right now we here in Sioux Falls are living pretty well. But there are lots of people who have come here as refugees to Sioux Falls from places where they have run out of fresh water or where they have run out of food. We also have, among those students that I saw working in my building and on my campus yesterday, students who are here just for a short time, international students who come from dry countries, who come from places where there is food insecurity. And they're aware that Sioux Falls is a place where they can come and learn how to implement solutions in a safe place like Sioux Falls that they can then bring home and make a difference. So I want to repeat what Joel was saying, that is that we have a lot of choices in front of us. And I think that we shouldn't just sit back and say either, well, the government has made a decision and therefore it's all over, or the government has made a decision and there's nothing else that can be done. We've got a document in front of us, a framework that I think is going to be useful for the future, and now it's up to us to take the next step and the next step and the next step and to act. You know, the framers of our Constitution and the framers of this country understood that we were going to be coming from a lot of different political standpoints. And one of the things that we get to do differently here in the United States that wasn't always the case before and isn't always the case in other places is to have conversations that cross political lines, economic lines, religious lines, educational lines. And I don't think that we can just coast and say, we're Americans, it's all set. I think this is one of those things that requires us to continue to return to our values and to act on those values. Now, I will say, as a counterpoint to something that Joel was saying, and don't disagree with Joel, but one thing that I want us to bear in mind is that while we do get to make lots of individual decisions, for instance, I can decide what sorts of flowers to plant in my garden at home. We also live in an increasingly globalized economy, and we live in a world where people travel quite a lot, where the population is increasing, and the natural resources are remaining more or less steady. The world's population has doubled in my lifetime. It's quadrupled in my father's lifetime. And when my father was born, the world's population had never been as high as it was, which means it's now at a historic high. But the amount of fresh water, the amount of arable land, the amount of clean air, and so on, these things are not increasing with the population. To put it differently, we live in a world where there is a commons. I've got my own private property, and that's important to me, and that's good. But we also have things like city parks, state parks, national parks, and even greater commons like the clean air that flows around the world. We know from history that when there's a volcano erupting somewhere far away, the ash falls everywhere. We know that when there's pollution in one place, it all flows downstream and somebody else will wind up receiving it. When I say that I want us as citizens of Sioux Falls to be good neighbors, I want us to think in the broadest sense. When Jesus said, you should love your neighbor as yourself, somebody then asked him, who's my neighbor? And the answer that he gave him was in a way saying, everyone's your neighbor. And we should be thinking about that as we look at this plan, this framework that's in front of us, and asking, how can I use this framework as a tool to love my neighbor as myself, including those who will come after me generations and generations ahead? Thanks. And thanks again to Holly and to Mayor Tenhagen, and of course to the whole committee.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone, for coming today, and that concludes our comments. We're happy to take any questions.
And in conversations with him and in his comments last night, you know, his question is why there's such a large change. That's a goal, and that's for the leader. And it seems like the shift is one of not a collective versus a free market, but some either philosophical or more practical political change in your rhetoric around. I'm just wondering what your thoughts.
Yeah, certainly not there's no political motivation by me behind this at all. First off, I need to thank these two guys. Great comments, great remarks. I feel like you should charge me for a credit hour of tuition, because that was really good. That was really good. Essentially, last March, when we rolled out the draft of the framework, I was made aware that we were missing some key players. So I can set goals, but a lot of those goals are relying on two main areas: your energy industry and building practices. That's how you'll reach those. And so by not having our building community and a lot of our energy partners at the table, who then came to the table and said, Paul, these things just quite honestly may not be realistic here. That was important for me to hear. So a quote I use a lot is, as the facts change, so does my mind. And I think that's actually what people want in elected leaders. It's like, okay, I have more information now, so my position can change as I learn more. Too often, elected officials, they get really dug in. It's like, well, look, I'll look weak if I change. I got to double down and go. It's like, no, okay? I changed my mind based on what I was told and the information I was given, that reducing those goals, taking out those goals, doesn't mean we're not going to still strive towards them, but putting goals in place for things that, quite honestly, a lot of it is outside of our control. There's a lot of federal things, there's a lot of state things that will impact those numbers. So I got 80 square miles in Sioux Falls. So for me to set a goal for 80 square miles when I don't know what the state is going to do or what the feds are going to do, it's a little bit of a bold thing to do, knowing that there's a lot of it outside of your control. Thus the framework saying, here's all the things we're going to do that we're going to try and push forward on, but we realize there's a lot of things outside of our control that will also drive whether we do or don't hit specific tangible metrics.
Excel shows that goal net zero by 2050. So it wasn't Excel that puts that on that. What specific area of it, was it home building in specifically that caused you to change your mind?
There's a variety of things. It was just a variety of people that weren't involved in the discussion. So when they got together and they said, hey, we have concerns about this, Excel was one of them. So Northwestern Energy was one of them. Mid-American was one of them. And so those are voices that we have to listen to, because every home in this community runs on their backbone of energy. So for us to be telling them what we're expecting of them without their voice, we can't do that. So that's what changed, is bringing their voices to the table.
So, and this is a case for something, okay, that policy is being part of the problem in the public environment statewide. The practical political application of it. So what's your reaction to that? You couldn't win a primary statewide if that.
I've done a lot of things that won't let me win a primary, including talking about masking and the importance of masking. I don't think like that. I know that's how people want to think, I think, but I care about Sioux Falls. So it's absurd to me that people think I'm making decisions based on another office. It's almost comical. So there's absolutely zero truth to that. Any other questions?
So,
Yeah.
obviously you talked about this, bringing in the bigger tents and getting people in after that first plan, the March 1. And, some of the members of the steering committee, some of the frustrations from these people are from the folks who say they were even happy with the plan as it ended in December, but then at least some of the people say they were, basically told earlier this year, hey, the plan is this now. It's a framework. It has vaguer language. We've removed some of these trigger words, as it's been called.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that accurate to say that it was sort of presented as here's what's happening after this December list of actions we came up with?
I would say that 80% of that framework that's presented was birthed out of the committee and all the work that they did. But at the end of the day, I am the mayor and it's my policies. So, just being totally practical, committees, ad hoc volunteer committees, we use all the time, but they aren't the policy setting bodies of our community. So we use their information to help drive us forward. So 80% of that plan came from that committee. We then took it and said, here's some things we're going to change as an administration. And then that's what we brought forward. So it wouldn't be what it is today without the work of that committee and all the time they put into it.
But at the same time, it is one of those significant changes was it changed from a policy document that the council will vote on to a framework that is, as was said, sort of a guideline system. I guess where does the line fall for that of saying, hey, we no longer see this as something that the council is going to implement, and it is becoming more of a here's what we think we're doing.
Yeah. The misnomer, again, the special interest groups around climate. I will call them that because we have a lot of special interest groups that are worried about their lane, but I have to look at the broader picture of the whole community. So when a special interest group is upset about something, I have to look at what are the impacts of that and what are the financial impacts of that and how will we implement something like this. So it's very rare for us to have a citizen-led board that drafts policy for the city. What does happen, though, is the framework from that plan is going to bring forward EV readiness studies, is going to bring forward maybe at some point a change to the building code standards that will affect green building codes. Those are things that the council will have to vote on and decide on. And it will be driven by that framework. So it's still in the council's court. There's still policy decisions the city council is going to have to make around this. So that hasn't changed at all. And it's not unlike we have a Falls Park master plan. There's no policy in that, but that plan is guiding what land we're acquiring, what our policies will be for safety in that park. I mean, all different kind of things that the council will have to decide. Do we want to buy this land? Do we want to implement this policy around safety at the falls? So it's not unlike that. It's not unlike the downtown 2035 plan that we have. We have plans all over the city and the community that are structure for the administration to use to bring policy forward.
Just one more question. Sorry, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not probably going to be discussing planning at this point. But what mistakes were made? Where was the mistake made that ended up with being so controversial?
I wouldn't say there were any mistakes made. It's a process, and if people want to see how the sausage is made in government, you're seeing it right now. It's inclusive. There's give and take. You bring a lot of different people together. So I won't say there's any mistakes. In fact, this is how government works. Like we roll something out, people have their input. Some people are mad on this side, some are mad on this side. We hit it down the middle of the fairway. It's good policy. That's exactly what we did here. So I would say, rather than a mistake, I would lift this up to say this is a good collaborative process because we involve more stakeholders in this than anything I've been a part of in over 5 years. To me, that's a good process.
All right, last minute question.
All right. Thank you, everyone.